Doreen's husband was the undefeated general of City BS legal world, Benjamin. They were the model couple in others' eyes, yet the one who personally sent her to prison was also him, all because his first love had committed manslaughter in a fit of passion, killing Doreen's father. Yet the husband who should have defended her justice instead sat on the opposing side, presenting criminal evidence that implicated her in murder. For 3 years in prison, she endured endless torment. He left her with nothing but a single "I'm sorry" and a promise to wait. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. Number 3527. After you're out, be a good person. The prison's iron gate slowly opened. A black sedan had been waiting by the roadside for quite some time, but the person who stepped out of the car wasn't Doreen's husband, it was his assistant, sister-in-law. Benjamin has something going on. So he sent me to pick you up. Doreen's clouded eyes brimmed with exhaustion. Without responding, she moved toward the back seat of the car. Hey, sister-in-law, wait a moment. The assistant called out to stop her, then frantically pulled out pomelo leaves from the front passenger seat. His eyes were filled with embarrassment. Benjamin said pomelo leaves ward off bad luck. Sorry, sis. With that, he struck Doreen with the pomelo leaves in his hand. Doreen's suddenly contracted pupils brimmed with mockery. Does he think I'm bad luck? Has he forgotten who personally sent me to prison? 3 years in prison, and she would never forget that day. Grace had a psychotic episode, ran out of her house with a gas can, intending to burn her alive, but by sheer accident, it was her father who ended up burned to death. She told the whole story to Benjamin, but on the day of the trial, he stood against her. When Doreen's lawyer eloquently produced a thick stack of evidence to vigorously defend her, Benjamin calmly took out a file folder, his eyes steady. There's something everyone doesn't know. I have another identity. I'm Doreen's husband. I know that Doreen's father molested her in her childhood and even attempted to assault her as an adult. The photos in the file are evidence, all proving she had motive and intent to commit the crime. The room erupted in an uproar. Even Doreen's defense lawyer couldn't help but turn their gaze toward her. Doreen widened her eyes as a thunderbolt seemed to strike directly through her skull, like a ringing in her ears. She could no longer see the pointing fingers in the courtroom or hear the murmurs of judgment around her. Never could she have imagined that this deeply buried scar would be torn open by the very person she loved most. For the next 15 minutes of the trial, Benjamin's new evidence and his defense pinned her mercilessly to the target of murder accusations. Until the trial concluded, the judge's final gavel strike felt more like it had struck her own head. Her voice fractured as she asked him, "Why?" Benjamin's eyes flickered with a trace of inner conflict. Grace was assaulted at the bar because she broke up with me, which worsened her mental illness. I promised her that, as compensation, I would fulfill 5 wishes for her. She said she didn't want to go to prison. I had no choice. Doreen, I'm sorry, but don't worry, no matter how long it takes, I'll wait for you to come out. Hearing his words, Doreen burst into laughter. As she laughed, tears slid into the corners of her mouth, bitter as gall bursting in her throat. She had a secret crush on Benjamin for 7 years. When he broke up with Grace and drowned his sorrows in bars, she was always there behind him, making sure he got home safely. He often forgot to eat while working. She always prepared meals to his taste one step ahead. She waited for him silently for so long, only to finally hear the words "Doreen, marry me." After marriage, he treated her well too. Everything she had ever glanced at, he bought and gave to her. Every dish she loved, he committed to memory. She thought her efforts had finally paid off. But then Grace said, she doesn't want to go to jail. Benjamin did not hesitate to choose to let her take the blame for this crime. He even went so far as to brutally expose the pain she had buried deep in her heart, unwilling for anyone to know, laying it bare for all to see. Doreen, I will defend you and prove that you didn't kill intentionally, as long as you confess voluntarily and behave well in prison to seek a reduced sentence. Believe me, my wife will always be you. Doreen, did he make her believe him? Her face streaked with tears. She smiled at the man across from her. Sister-in-law, we're here. The memory came to an abrupt end. Doreen blinked her sore, swollen eyes calmly. How long had it been since she last shed tears? Her tears had long since dried up completely in prison. The doctor said she would never shed another tear in her lifetime. Doreen gazed silently at the unfamiliar street before her, then at the luxurious restaurant by the roadside. The car door suddenly swung open from outside. Benjamin appeared before her with a beaming smile. Doreen, hurry and get out. Grace prepared a special celebration just for you. We're only missing you now. Benjamin remained exactly as she remembered him. His eyes brimmed with spring-like warmth, radiating even more confidence and pride. Doreen felt her eyelashes tremble slightly as she watched his slender hand rest on her shoulder. Before she could push him away, a sudden noise came from across the room. "Doreen, you're here." Grace, the moment the voice sounded, the hand resting on her shoulder, quietly withdrew. Doreen remained silent, the atmosphere frozen. Grace, with red-rimmed eyes, stepped forward to take her hand. "Doreen, everything that happened before was my fault. I sincerely want to apologize to you." Benjamin, seeing her tears, he couldn't help but speak up to explain. "Grace has been selecting restaurants and decorating the venue since early morning to celebrate your release. Working non-stop without even eating, she genuinely wants to apologize to you." They spoke one after another, as if accusing Doreen of being utterly unreasonable. No one cared at all about how she had endured those 3 years in prison, framed for a murder she didn't commit. Doreen was about to speak when Benjamin pulled her into the dining room. Before they even stepped inside, the sound of Doreen being discussed could already be heard, if it weren't for giving Benjamin and Grace face. "I wouldn't be here eating, celebrating a murderer." "Celebrating what?" "Celebrating her killing someone." "Exactly. I've told Benjamin before, who knows how someone from such humble origins was raised. With that kind of background, she's definitely not pure." Speaking of her being unclean, "I heard the reason she killed her father was because he tried to rape her. She was molested as a child, and when he tried to go all the way as she grew up, it didn't end well." Really, with that kind of background, Benjamin actually took a liking to her. Compared to Grace, she's way worse, isn't she? Back when he was with Grace, if it weren't for Benjamin's parents objecting, they would have probably had kids by now. Hearing these words, Benjamin's expression immediately darkened. He instinctively held Doreen tightly in his arms, his palm pressed firmly against her ear. It was a conditioned reflex, deeply imprinted in Benjamin's mind. But the familiar trembling never came. Instead, a pair of skeletal hands gently pushed him away. Benjamin looked at Doreen in utter astonishment. Doreen knew exactly what he was thinking. Doreen's dad molesting her during her childhood had always been an old scar hidden deep in Doreen's heart. Whenever painful memories resurfaced, it was Benjamin who accompanied and comforted her in this way. He guarded her battered heart like armor, shielding it with utmost care. Benjamin promised to protect her. Swore he'd never let anyone hurt her again, until that day in court. Only then did she realize this armor was studded with poisoned spikes, piercing her flesh until no inch remained unscathed, leaving her no room to even breathe. The scorn and disgust she deserved, she had long endured. Doreen no longer needed the armor thrown by him, the instigator. Benjamin felt a sudden tightness in his chest, an indescribable feeling weighed heavily on him, making him miserable. He immediately blamed the people in the room for his irritation. The next second, he forcefully kicked the door open. The sound of discussion inside instantly ceased. With a dark expression, he glared at those who had just been shamelessly gossiping about Doreen. "Doreen is my wife. Everything she's been through wasn't by her choice. If any of you have issues with her, come at me instead. I won't force those who don't want to, but there's no need for two-faced behavior." The seated crowd immediately fell into an awkward silence, exchanging uneasy glances. Grace, seeing Benjamin's expression, couldn't hide a flash of jealousy and resentment in her eyes. Yet the next moment, she put on a wounded expression and walked over to Doreen with a glass of wine. She drained the wine glass in one gulp. The remaining glass was placed before Doreen. "It's all my fault. I only wanted everyone to be happy. Doreen, I formally apologize to you here. Can you forgive me?" Doreen pushed the glass away coldly. Someone nearby immediately voiced their indignation. "What's she being so arrogant about? Grace has already humbled herself to apologize. What more does she want?" "Exactly. We didn't come today to watch Grace get humiliated." What was Benjamin thinking? Grace sacrificed her reputation to stand by him for 3 years, and he doesn't even know how to be grateful. Benjamin clenched his jaw, glancing at the aggrieved Grace across from him. Then at Doreen beside him. Finally, slender fingers took Grace's wine glass held midair and brought it before Doreen's eyes. "Doreen, be good now, don't make a spectacle of yourself." Doreen couldn't help but laugh inwardly. Make a spectacle? Whose joke are you laughing at? Grace's. Yet she still refused to take it. Benjamin gazed at her with dark eyes, leaning close to her ear as he spoke softly. "It's been a long time since you visited your grandmother. Doreen, be good. Don't make Grace lose face. Drink this glass of wine, and I'll take you to see your grandmother." "Grandma." Doreen's eyes finally showed a ripple of emotion. Watching the swaying liquor before her, she could already taste a metallic tang rising in her throat. Without further hesitation, she snatched the glass and downed it in one gulp. The atmosphere eased accordingly, but then those people suddenly started to jeer, taking turns to toast her. Doreen instinctively turned to look at Benjamin. He simply nodded at her, signaling her to drink it all. Under the table, Doreen's hand trembled as she clutched her pants tightly, Her fingertips were pale from the force, her face an unnatural white. Yet all these changes in her, Benjamin never noticed. He was busy peeling shrimp for Grace to eat. Instead, Grace kept glancing at her with mischievous amusement in her eyes. 1 cup, 2 cups, 3 cups. Doreen had lost count of how many drinks she'd been forced to down. The burning pain in her stomach made sweat pour down her face. "Doreen, let me toast you again," Grace said with a smile, offering the drink, but her throat tightened, and a mouthful of blood instantly gushed out. "Ah!" Benjamin immediately shielded Grace, and the blood splattered onto his white shirt. Doreen's eyes were tightly shut, and her body uncontrollably fell backward. When she woke up again, Doreen had already been admitted to the hospital. The dazzling lights shone on her eyelids. Benjamin had no idea how long he'd been sitting beside her. Seeing her regain consciousness, his eyes filled with icy coldness. "You'd go to such lengths just to avoid drinking. Doreen, when did you become so calculating, such a good actress?" Doreen felt a sudden tightness in her chest. "You think I'm faking my illness?" These were the first words Doreen spoke after their reunion, yet they made Benjamin frown deeply. This was too far from the soft, gentle voice he remembered. He fell silent, looking at Doreen, who had lost a lot of weight. He had only just realized it when he picked her up. How could she be so thin, light as a feather, without any sense of weight? A sense of guilt sprouted once more in his heart. Benjamin let out a long sigh and sat back down beside her, his warm palm pressed against Doreen's hand, trying to dispel the cold there. "Doreen," he said, "I've already fulfilled 3 of the 5 promises I made to Grace. There are just 2 left. Once I've kept my word to her, I can finally let go of the past. Then, if you don't want to stay in City B, we'll go abroad. You said you wanted to live somewhere filled with flowers. I'll buy an entire estate and plant it full of blossoms for you." He described it all with joy in his heart. But he didn't notice the empty, pale gaze of the person lying in the hospital bed. "Where is my grandmother?" Doreen's words interrupted his fantasy. And Benjamin's face showed a hint of surprise. He quickly reacted, and just as he was about to speak, the door was suddenly pushed open with force. "Benjamin, Grace is having another episode. You should go see her quickly." The large hand on the back of her own quickly withdrew, and Benjamin swiftly left the room, not even sparing a glance for the woman behind him. Doreen watched his retreating figure and sneered. The door to the room opened again, and a woman in a nurse's uniform cautiously looked around before stuffing a report into her hand. "Miss Doreen, did you offend someone? You clearly have such severe internal injuries, but we were told to forge a fake examination report for that gentleman to see. This is your actual report. You have an old injury in your throat. And there's a foreign object in your stomach that needs to be surgically removed and examined." The nurse quickly left after speaking. Doreen stared blankly at the pristine white wall. The injury to her throat was sustained when she first arrived at the prison, forced by a group of people to swallow food containing foreign objects, which then scratched her. That day, she bled profusely. She remembered how her bag had been snatched and her leg slashed in the past. Looking at the wound on her leg, Benjamin's eyes filled with heartache. He held her tightly, apologizing all night long. Ever since then, he would drive from the opposite direction every day to pick her up from work. The journey took 40 minutes, through all 4 seasons, yet he never uttered a single complaint. And now, Doreen glanced at the test results with self-mockery. She had been a fool. To believe in a man's promise of love is to believe in forever. Doreen needed surgery. But she couldn't afford the medical expenses and had no choice but to call Benjamin. After all, the money she had earned from her previous job was still in Benjamin's hands. But the moment Benjamin heard the word surgery, he let out a bitter laugh. "Doreen, haven't you acted enough? Just a few drinks and you're talking about surgery. I'm already overwhelmed. Can you stop making things worse for me?" The phone line filled with static before she heard the same man who just harshly scolded her suddenly soften his tone to comfort Grace. "Grace, you're on your period. You shouldn't eat this. Be good now, listen to me." Even though she had already given up all hope for Benjamin, yet at this moment, Doreen felt as if a coarse rope were twisting around her heart, squeezing out breathless, suffocating pain. She couldn't cry. She could only let out a hideous laugh, until she laughed herself exhausted. Until she could laugh no more. The surgery fees were paid by her former prison mate. Gina, seeing her in such a wretched state, lit a cigarette and placed it between her lips. After a long pause, he scolded her in frustration. "Just look at you, how pathetic can you be? What's the point of going back to a man like that after he gets out of prison?" Dark circles coiled around her eyes. Doreen stared intently with clouded vision. After a long silence, the corners of her lips twitched faintly. "You think I still love him? Otherwise, if I were you, I'd have slapped them long ago and beaten those 2 scumbags to death." Doreen laughed until her eyes crinkled. How could that be? Benjamin ruined her life, nailing her to the pillar of shame to be reviled and scorned, yet he remained her Mr. Benjamin. Grace had, in these 3 years, become a female lawyer capable of standing shoulder to shoulder with him. Who would have known that they became towering mountains revered by thousands? Standing upon her flesh and blood, she would never forget these humiliations she endured. She would drag Benjamin and Grace down to become the mud beneath everyone's feet. Gina, do you know someone in the household registration office? Gina nodded in stunned confusion. Gina, could you do me one more favor? In a month, help me erase all information related to Doreen. Upon learning that Doreen had indeed undergone surgery, Benjamin rushed to the hospital ward immediately. He specifically requested experts to analyze the tumor extracted from Doreen's stomach. From meals to care, it was as if he wanted to pamper her like a princess. Until the test results came back benign, he hugged Doreen tightly in belated fear. Doreen only then noticed his trembling body. Finding it somewhat laughable, she couldn't help but mock him. Didn't you refuse to believe I needed surgery? Why are you so terrified now? Benjamin knew she was holding a grudge. He grasped her hands and pressed them to his thin lips, his eyes filled with both worry and inner conflict. Doreen, I've already uncovered who falsified the report. She's Grace's friend, and she did this foolish thing thinking she was standing up for Grace. I've already punished her on your behalf, avenged you. So now, Doreen suddenly raised her eyes to meet his gaze. I want to know, how did you punish her? Benjamin choked back the words that were stuck in his throat. A flash of complexity flickered in his eyes. She'll pay triple the hospitalization fees this time. Compensation for nutrition and nursing care will also be transferred to your account. I've already warned her family she'll be reflecting on her actions for a week. Ha! Doreen curled her lips into a smile at him. Benjamin clenched his jaw and averted his gaze. After all, she's Grace's closest friend. Too harsh a punishment would devastate Grace. Grace. Benjamin's mouth was full of Grace. Doreen laughed until her body shook, wanting to scream hysterically, but her voice was ruined. She couldn't make a sound. Her desperate fingers dug deep into her flesh. Benjamin wanted to speak up in his own defense, yet I don't know where to begin. After a long silence, as if suddenly remembering, he immediately opened his mouth. Doreen, believe me, just 2 more wishes left. Once I fulfill them, Benjamin, I'm tired, I need rest. She interrupted him, beneath those calm, unrippled eyes. Something seemed to be growing and clamoring, until the door gently closed. Doreen tightly shut her eyes. On the path of chasing Benjamin, she overcame all hardships and obstacles. She once thought that marrying him would be enough. She was the happiest woman in the world, yet reality told her, what doesn't belong to her, she should never touch. On the day she was discharged from the hospital, Benjamin took her home. 3 years later, I stepped in again. Doreen watched as if in another world as the fruits and vegetables she had planted in the yard were replaced by fiery red roses. At the entrance, she couldn't find her old slippers. Instead, there was a new pair of pink Stella Lou slippers. Benjamin stiffened, kicked it aside, then rummaged through the shoe cabinet to find a pair of guest slippers for her. Then, with an awkward expression, he looked at her and said, I thought your old slippers were too worn out, so I replaced them. Haven't had time to buy new ones yet. Doreen lowered her eyes without responding. Old shoes represent old relationships. Benjamin wanted to replace more than just a pair of worn-out slippers. On the living room sofa, several pieces of women's clothing were strewn about. He spoke again, explaining, Grace had an episode a couple of days ago. It was sudden, and a friend brought her here to me. But rest assured, she's staying in the guest room, as if afraid she might misunderstand. Benjamin even specifically took her to see the guest room where Grace was staying. Doreen's indifference instantly flustered him. He embraced Doreen, trying to dispel the unease in his heart. Doreen, I've missed you so much. When I was in prison, you refused to see me. Every night I couldn't sleep. I dreamt you were blaming me. I don't want to bring up those old things again. Doreen forcefully pulled out of his embrace, interrupting him. Benjamin, his fingers trembled slightly as he instinctively tightened his grip on her hand. All right, it's all in the past now. Doreen, she let out a cold laugh, just about to ask about her grandmother when the front door suddenly creaked open. Grace, with practiced ease, she set down her belongings and spotted Benjamin holding Doreen. The envy in her eyes seemingly impossible to conceal. Benjamin, let's go to the mall together to buy Doreen some change of clothes, she said with feigned warmth, draping an arm around Doreen. Benjamin then looked at Doreen as if something had just occurred to him. Your old clothes had been stored for too long. Grace was afraid you wouldn't be able to wear them when you returned, so she threw them away for you. Threw them away? Doreen coldly shook off Grace's arm that was supporting her. Grace seemed to deliberately provoke her, but Doreen simply replied, okay, Just before they left, Doreen excused herself to go to the restroom. She quietly snuck into Benjamin's study and Grace's bedroom. She carefully hid the pinhole cameras. Arriving at the mall, Grace found an excuse to send Benjamin away, then cornered her. She glared at Doreen with venom in her eyes. "Doreen, you're really hard to kill, aren't you? But it doesn't matter, I'll make sure you see exactly who Benjamin will choose between us." As soon as she finished speaking, Grace raised her hand and triggered the smoke alarm. Panic immediately erupted in the mall. Screams, sounds of people fleeing. The crowd instantly scattered the two of them. Benjamin saw Grace being pushed to the side and, without a second thought, rushed towards her. But just as he was about to look for Doreen, Grace grabbed his arm tightly, her face streaked with tears. She looked at Benjamin with panicked eyes. "Benjamin, I'm so scared." Benjamin frowned deeply but hesitated no longer. He scooped the woman before him into a tight embrace and carried her toward safety. Doreen could only watch helplessly as his figure vanished before her eyes. She could have easily called out to Benjamin, telling him, "I'm here," but she never did. Grace wanted her to see clearly who Benjamin would choose between them. She just found Grace ridiculous. This choice had already been made by Benjamin 3 years ago. What's the point of testing now? Her body was violently shoved by the crowd behind her, sending her crashing to the ground. Those focused solely on survival paid no heed to what lay beneath their feet, whether person or object, as they stepped squarely on her shoulder. Doreen screamed in pain, followed by her head, her feet, her fingers. She couldn't tell what was what. The thin air made her face flush, unable to catch her breath. The churning pain in her stomach numbed her senses, until everything went black, and she completely passed out. Waking up again, I found myself in the hospital once more. Benjamin held a cigarette between his fingers, exhaling smoke towards the window. Doreen was choked into a fit of violent coughing. He quickly pinched out the cigarette between his fingers, as if afraid she would hold him accountable. Benjamin suddenly spoke up first. "Doreen, I was going to turn back to find you. But Grace suddenly had a headache. After all, she's not in good health, and I was afraid something might happen to her. So I planned to send her out first and then come back for you. But, I understand." She forced a smile. How could she not understand? The one who truly needed his explanation was Grace. He already cared deeply for her. She didn't need to prove it to herself over and over again. Seeing her like this, Benjamin found his long-prepared excuses stuck in his throat. "You understand?" "Yes, I understand." She seemed very certain. Benjamin's expression suddenly darkened. For some inexplicable reason, a surge of anger lodged in his chest, neither rising nor subsiding. "I want to see Grandma." Benjamin had finally heard her request, yet it turned out to be such a simple little thing. He thought for a moment before speaking. "Doreen, Grandma had some heart discomfort a couple days ago, but don't worry, I've already arranged for her to get checked out, once you've recovered. I'll arrange for you two to meet." Her ribs were injured, and even breathing was accompanied by intense pain. Upon hearing that her grandmother was ill, Doreen felt her heart suddenly tighten. "Don't worry, it's just a minor issue. I specifically consulted a cardiology specialist. I'll take you to see her as soon as you can stand up." As if to make amends, Benjamin stayed by Doreen's side without leaving for a moment. Yet the very next evening, his phone rang in his pocket. "Benjamin, I do like you, but in terms of who came first, we fell in love first. Is Doreen trying to drive me to my death?" The receiver carried the sobbing voice of Grace. The phone was suddenly hung up. Benjamin grabbed his coat without hesitation and headed out the door. Doreen didn't know what had happened, but her intuition told her it was nothing good. She picked up her phone and called Gina again. "Gina, can you do me another favor? Help me find out which hospital my grandma is in." Benjamin returned late at night. Outside, thunder and rain lashed down, and he was soaked to the bone, raindrops dripping onto Doreen's hospital bed. But upon closer inspection, where did this rainwater come from? "It's clearly blood." Doreen's eyes snapped open, and what she saw was his face, shrouded in a dark, heavy aura. "Doreen, why would you do this?" Benjamin's brows were furrowed, his expression dark and gloomy. She frowned, bewildered. "What are you talking about? What, why?" Benjamin swiftly pulled out his phone from his pocket and slammed it onto her hand. She winced in pain, her brows furrowed, and her eyes darted to the photos on the phone. Those photos were taken years ago, when Grace was picked up at a hotel. Beautiful female lawyer drunkenly picked up and assaulted. The bold, red headline was prominently displayed. Someone else exposed her as a shameless and despicable homewrecker. All sorts of vile and offensive words flooded the comment section. "I've already asked the reporter who broke this news, and he explicitly stated that a woman named Doreen contacted him, asking for no payment, with the sole purpose of destroying Grace. The evidence is conclusive. Doreen, what else do you have to explain?" She looked up and met his bloodshot eyes. It wasn't me, I didn't do it. Slap, a loud slap suddenly echoed through the room. Doreen, how could you become so vicious? Grace killed herself by slitting her wrists because of you, Doreen. This matter won't end here. Benjamin turned and left without looking back. She slowly shifted her numb, stiff body, gazing at the long-gone figure that had already disappeared. In my mind, I recalled the vows they had exchanged during their wedding: loyalty, trust, care. Benjamin, which of these have you actually kept? Soon, Doreen would find out. Benjamin, what exactly did that parting remark he left mean? Online searches about the most beautiful female lawyers' drink-drugging photos and home-wrecking scandal were instantly scrubbed from trending topics. In their place appeared Doreen's adolescent photos showing her being molested by her biological father. The whistleblower unflinchingly posted her full name and facial features online for public scrutiny and commentary. They even portrayed her as a jealous married woman, using the freedom of speech as a tool for online violence to retaliate against her husband's ex-girlfriend. How vile, just to compete for favor. She exposed photos of someone else's suffering. She's hardly spotless herself. Exactly, like father like daughter. Her dad's so disgusting. She's definitely the same, who knows? Maybe she even enjoys it. Look at her chest, she already had D cups when she was so young. Probably got that way from being groped by some lover in secret. Countless filthy, humiliating words flooded into Doreen's vision. She suddenly clamped her phone shut, clutching her head tightly with both hands. The nightmares of the past seemed ready to break through the already loosened seal. No matter how desperately she struggled, someone would always smother her with memories of the past, leaving her unable to breathe. Doreen, breathe, Doreen, get a plastic bag, hurry. Her mind went blank, the noise in her ears unceasing, until something was slipped over her head. 1, 2, 3, colors gradually returned to her vision. Benjamin appeared before her once again, but before he could say anything, he was called away by Grace again. Doreen only heard a voice as he was leaving. The trending topic has been taken down. Doreen, don't let there be a next time. The following days, Benjamin stayed by Grace's side. He accompanied her to see the ocean, accompanied her to admire the moon. They reminisced about past joys together on the mountain. A passerby who happened upon them took photos and posted them online. Not a single person condemned Grace for knowingly being the other woman. In the comments section, everyone was expressing blessings and sighs over their ill-fated romance. Some claimed to be witnesses of their relationship. They mentioned how Benjamin during school days would give gifts to almost the entire class just so he could present one to Grace. Grace casually mentioned a small cake, and without hesitation, he flew to the neighboring city to buy it. That very night, it was delivered right to her doorstep. With these incidents, another wave of people emerged online. They encouraged Benjamin to divorce his toxic wife and marry his first love instead. Grace tirelessly sent these live screenshots to her. Doreen ignored her provocation. This man, she had long since decided to let him go. At night, Doreen opened the software connected to the camera. Never did I expect to accidentally see Grace completely naked. She stood before Benjamin, her eyes glistening with pleading. The fourth wish, Benjamin, touch me. In the video, Benjamin gazed at her with complicated emotions. Grace, this is my fourth wish. Just a touch. Benjamin, don't refuse me. She took Benjamin's hand and guided it toward the softness of her chest. This time, he hesitated but didn't refuse again. Doreen's eyes were filled with mockery. She copied the video and immediately turned off her phone. Gina found the hospital where her grandmother was staying. She was also given contact information to process the cancellation of her identity documents. She had everything prepared and tidied herself up before heading to the hospital where her grandmother was. When she was imprisoned, her only request to Benjamin was not to tell her grandmother back in the rural hometown about these matters. She had grown up relying solely on her grandmother, who remained completely unaware of what her father had done to her. Grandma is old and has a bad heart. She couldn't even imagine how heartbroken Grandma would be if she found out. Doreen's face bore a smile she hadn't shown in a long time. She held flowers in her hand. Her hand just resting on the doorknob of the hospital room. Suddenly, the sound of something shattering came from inside. Take one last look. This is how your granddaughter was molested by her own father. I've got dozens more photos here, so feast your eyes to your heart's content. I heard it was you who personally sent her to her father's side. What do you call that? The root of all evil. Seems like you're pretty damn deserving of death too. Your granddaughter killed the father who molested her, then served 3 years in prison, only recently released. Tell me, what's the point of trash like her still being alive? The front door burst open with a bang. Grace saw her, and the smile on her lips slowly faded. Grandma, Doreen's hoarse voice echoed through the house. The elderly man lay there, his face ashen, with teardrops glistening in his clouded eyes, her withered hands clutched desperately at the clothes over her chest. Struggling with all her might as she gasped for breath, the heart monitor suddenly emitted a piercing alarm. Grace shrank back fearfully at the sight, her steps faltering with guilt, but in a moment of carelessness, she stepped on the shards of the dishes she had just forcefully smashed. The thin sole of her shoe was pierced, and blood flowed all over the floor. In her terror, she immediately had an attack. "Grace, what's wrong?" Benjamin suddenly burst in through the main entrance. Seeing her frightened state, he anxiously scooped her up in his arms, his fierce gaze locked onto the emotionally distraught Doreen in the hospital room, who kept crying out, "Grandma, Doreen, how many times have I told you? Why must you keep troubling Grace?" he shouted angrily. Yet Doreen never once cast her gaze upon the two of them from start to finish. Grace suddenly began breathing rapidly. He could no longer hold back. "All of you, come look at Grace, she can't catch her breath." The doctor performing first aid beside Doreen was caught in a dilemma. "But, no buts. Grace, if anything happens to her, none of you will get away with it." Doreen stood thunderstruck, her parched eye sockets aching and swollen as if they might rot away. No, Benjamin, Grandma, she's fainted." She nearly collapsed to her knees, desperately reaching to clutch at Benjamin's pant leg, yet his expression remained cold, his eyes flashing with unmistakable disgust. If your grandmother still had the strength to harm Grace, how could anything possibly happen to her? Without hesitation, he turned and walked away. The doctors sighed helplessly. "Miss, your grandmother has passed away. Please accept our condolences." Large, scalding tears fell onto her arms, but she kept shaking her head in disbelief. She used all her strength to pull at the doctors, who had no choice but to leave. "Please, I beg you, please save my grandmother." She knelt down and kowtowed, her head striking the ground with a violent thud, but those people dared not delay any longer and could only force themselves to leave the ward. Staring at the suddenly silent ward, she could no longer hold back and let out a hoarse scream, the despair on her face nearly consuming her. On the day Doreen was to leave, the sky was gloomy and overcast with dark clouds. She numbly handled her grandmother's funeral arrangements. Only when she returned home to pack her luggage did she discover that Benjamin, who had been missing for days, was also there. A stack of documents was suddenly placed before her. Benjamin rubbed his temples. This was Grace's last wish. "She wanted to make up for the past, to hold a wedding with me. To make it convincing, we had to fake a divorce first. We just needed to avoid collecting the certificate after the cooling-off period." Doreen vaguely accepted the document and signed her name on it without hesitation. He suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. "Wife, it's finally over. Have you decided where you want to travel? We can bring Grandma along. The three of us can go together." Before Doreen could respond, Benjamin's phone rang once again. "Benjamin, didn't we agree to meet for the dress fitting? Are you there yet?" He glanced at his watch and hurriedly grabbed his coat to leave. As he reached the doorway, he suddenly paused and looked back at Doreen. She still sat there quietly, yet it seemed something was missing. He shook his head. Perhaps he was overthinking. The door closed. Doreen's eyes finally showed a flicker of emotion. She pulled out the wedding photos stuffed in the corner, tore each couple's photo right down the middle, until the shredded pieces covered the entire floor. She grabbed her luggage and walked away without looking back. She would give this newlywed couple a wedding gift they would remember for a lifetime. In the following days, Benjamin was busy every day preparing for his wedding with Grace. Grace dug out the love letters they had exchanged in the past. They were filled with their fantasies about their future wedding. She leaned close to his ear, repeating the words over and over with sheer delight. But Benjamin no longer held the same anticipation and patience as before. He gently pushed Grace away. His weary eyes gradually clouded with irritation. "Just handle the wedding preparations as you see fit." They had originally agreed it was just a formality, but it was merely the color of the flowers placed at the ceremony. Grace had already asked him countless times. These days, he worked at the law firm during the day. In the evening, he still had to accompany Grace to pick out all sorts of miscellaneous things, leaving him utterly exhausted by the time it was over. It was already very late at night. Doreen was always a light sleeper, and to avoid disturbing her rest, he usually slept at the law firm. Benjamin knew about Doreen's hidden grievances. He owed her too much, and he would spend his lifetime making it up to her. He would love her well and make amends properly. Soon, all of this would be over. He opened the drawer and took out the wedding ring lying quietly inside. Doreen, when she was imprisoned, she personally took it off her ring finger and threw it to him. For these 3 years, he had carefully kept it, waiting for the ring's owner to be released. During this time, troubles came one after another. He got caught up in the business and forgot about it again. His heart filled with guilt, he took out his phone and began typing a message. "Honey, I remember you've always wanted to visit Xinjiang. How about we go on a trip together in a few days? Benjamin had just sent the message. A glaring red exclamation mark instantly appeared in the chat box. He furrowed his brows, staring at that glaring red. Thinking Doreen was just throwing another childish tantrum, he immediately turned off his phone and leaned back on the sofa irritably, closing his eyes to rest. On the wedding day, everything became different from the original plan. Watching the endless stream of people coming and going, Benjamin's face instantly darkened. He pulled Grace, who was constantly greeting people, into the room. Grace, didn't we agree to only invite mutual friends? Why did you call the press and media too? Grace happily placed her hands on Benjamin's shoulders. Not just the media reporters. I've also invited all those online fans who support us being together. Benjamin, can't you see? Everyone is supporting us. They all want us to be together. In everyone's eyes, I'm much more suitable for you than Doreen. We're meant to be, if not for your parents. We might have gotten married long ago, maybe even have children by now. She stood on tiptoe, her nose brushing against Benjamin's chin, but the next second, she was coldly pushed away by the man before her. We agreed from the start that this wedding would just be a formality, and then you dropped the lawsuit against Doreen for exposing your personal privacy. I've done everything you asked, even fulfilled all 5 of your wishes. After this wedding, you and I will have nothing more to do with each other. Even if you brought all these people to witness it, there's no chance we'll be together again. Grace, what's past is past. I've fallen in love with Doreen now, and I won't abandon her a second time. His voice was firm as he stared at her. Grace's smile froze on her face. A chill rose from the soles of her feet, spreading through her entire body, but before she could speak, Benjamin had already pulled open the door and walked out. Grace panicked, lifting her skirt as she hurried after him. Benjamin, where are you rushing off to in such a hurry? Groom, could it be you can't wait to take our Grace to the bridal chamber? Several friends suddenly surrounded Benjamin, who was walking ahead. Can't you wait a little longer? Benjamin, what do you know? Benjamin has had enough rough fair time for some fine grains. Ha 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 ha. His gaze turned icy, lips pressed into a tight line. Had enough to say, then get lost. The person who just said that was Grace's subordinate, having been snubbed. His face turned alternately green and purple as he looked at Benjamin and then at Grace behind him. Grace's expression immediately darkened as well. Frowning, she stepped forward to try and take Benjamin's arm. Benjamin recoiled as if electrocuted, quickly pulling away. The atmosphere grew awkward, with onlookers averting their gazes elsewhere, just as Benjamin was about to walk away. Grace's summoned fans came charging over again, phones and cameras in hand. They suddenly turned the camera toward Benjamin. Mr. Benjamin, MS. Grace, congratulations on your wedding. What are your plans next? Where are you going for your honeymoon? Could you share your updates on social media? There are still many of your fan sisters in our support group who hope to continue witnessing your love story. That's right, everyone who heard your story says it makes them believe in love again. Grace, seeing this, offered a gentle smile and once again slipped her hand into Benjamin's arm. Seeing Benjamin still trying to avoid her, she met his eyes with a pleading, hurt expression. Benjamin stiffened his face but didn't push her away. Thank you all for your love, but we're not public figures after all. Our future plans aren't set yet, and we don't intend to make them public. However, I'll occasionally share travel photos of me and Benjamin in the group chat for everyone to see. The surrounding crowd reacted with mixed feelings, some disappointed, others pleasantly surprised. Only Benjamin's expression suddenly darkened. He turned to Grace and questioned in a voice only she could hear. Didn't I tell you to explain it to them? Benjamin, don't be angry. The momentum and buzz around the two of us lately have been great. It's been incredibly beneficial for the firm. You know this better than anyone. The number of clients seeking our defense has multiplied beyond last year's numbers. His expression remained grim. Grace could only stiffen her neck and speak in a placating tone. I know you dislike excessive exposure. At worst, I'll just say a few words as an excuse to brush them off for now. For now, this would have to do. Benjamin didn't want to tarnish the law firm's reputation because of his personal matters. Could only accompany Grace to perform this final act. As the event drew to a close, Grace rose to see off the media and fan friends. The banquet hall doors suddenly swung open. May I ask, which one of you is Benjamin? Benjamin stepped forward in surprise. That's me. There's a package for you. Please sign for it. Benjamin looked at the delivery box with confusion, but before he could take it, Grace snatched it from the courier's hands. No sender's name, just a USB drive. I've got it. It must be a congratulatory video sent by one of our friends who knows we're holding our wedding banquet here today. Grace beamed with delight as she asked someone to plug it into the computer for playback. Watching her retreating figure, Benjamin felt inexplicably unsettled. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. Ms. Grace, let's put it on the big screen. We've taken quite a few videos and plan to edit them for you and Mr. Benjamin to post online later. Grace raised an eyebrow and agreed cheerfully. The lights in the banquet hall dimmed. Suddenly, the large screen at the front of the stage came to life with sound. Before anyone could notice anything amiss, a blinding white light appeared before everyone's eyes. So good, feels so good, Benjamin. A familiar voice suddenly rang out. Almost simultaneously, everyone widened their eyes and turned their gazes toward Grace. The scene continued to play, showing her baring her chest and exposing herself, standing before Benjamin, begging for his touch. Benjamin, yes, just like that, touch me. Benjamin, I love it so much. Benjamin, I'm the only woman truly worthy of you. Back then, to protect me, you framed Doreen for murder. Doesn't that say it all? You claimed to love Doreen, but if you really did, how could you have treated her like that? Benjamin, don't lie to me. You want to be with me, don't you? Look at you, your mouth is even harder than that thing. Don't touch me. Grace, you know full well I was forced into this. If it weren't for fulfilling your third wish, I would never have sent my own wife to prison. If I didn't feel indebted to you, I wouldn't have made this decision. Now, with just one last wish remaining, we'll have no further ties, and you must stop interfering with my life. Benjamin spoke faster, his hand movements growing increasingly frantic. The woman in the video gasped uncontrollably, caught between agony and ecstasy. Turn it off, shut it off now. A sharp scream from Grace pierced through the banquet hall. Everyone was stunned by the video playing before their eyes. Benjamin watched the absurd scene unfold with his scalp tingling. He could barely tear his gaze away, staring fixedly ahead. That was his home, yet surveillance cameras had been installed. Who was it that installed them? There seemed no need to guess at all. It was Doreen. How could this be? This completely shatters my worldview. They were actually together all along. All that talk about unrequited love was fake, just to deceive us. Benjamin actually sent his own wife to prison for Grace's sake. He's a lawyer, yet he exploited his wife's trust in him to pull this off. Benjamin trembled all over, rooted to the spot as if his feet had taken root. He wanted to speak up in defense, but his throat seemed clogged by something. After a long while, he stammered pitifully, I didn't do it with her. I didn't betray my wife. How disgusting. You didn't do it. Getting her off with your hands doesn't count. What a hypocrite. If that doesn't count as doing it, then what does? Exactly. I can't believe I ever supported people like you. Makes me sick to my stomach. Just standing here one more second disgusts me. I'm exposing you the moment I get back. Why wait? Expose them now. What a scumbag and a slut. Let everyone see what they're really like. Whoever leaked this must be a saint, probably his poor wife, suffering in silence for over 3 years. Finally, the world gets to see these lovebirds for what they are. The large screen had already been turned off, but the video from earlier had long been captured by someone in its entirety. One of the girls was about to operate her phone when a figure suddenly lunged at her, with a loud crack. The phone was smashed to the ground. Grace glared ferociously at everyone present. No filming. No one is allowed to film. This is a doctored video. All fake. Someone is deliberately framing me. And what do you lowlifes know? Benjamin and I are meant to be. We are each other's true love. It's Doreen who interfered. She's the one who ruined our relationship. Grace had an episode. She furiously smashed the vase within her reach. The fiery, vibrant roses were trampled under her feet. They were a rare variety she had meticulously selected over several days and then had airshipped. No one knew how much she valued today. But now, everything was ruined. Everyone was shocked by her like this. Friends quickly distanced themselves from her, while the media and fans took several steps back, capturing every moment of her breakdown and outburst. Dazzled by the camera flashes, she instinctively reached out for Benjamin, only to see his figure already disappearing through the main door. He had simply abandoned her here. Benjamin's footsteps quickened as he no longer cared about maintaining order at the wedding venue. Doreen wasn't answering her phone, and his messages went unreplied. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, the clammy sweat making him restless all over. There were more red lights on the road than usual. While waiting at a red light, he tried calling again, but still, no one answered. Benjamin inexplicably recalled that day in Doreen's grandmother's hospital room, her eyes, filled with despair, sorrow, and a hint of hatred. His chest felt as if something had forcefully stabbed it, causing intense pain. The phone suddenly rang, and he was overjoyed, thinking it was Doreen calling back. Honey, Mr. Benjamin, Ms. Grace is having another episode. The situation is getting out of control. She's holding a fruit knife and won't let anyone near her. You need to come back and stop her now. Grace's assistant kept urging him frantically. as if pressing for his life, but Benjamin's hands on the steering wheel kept heading towards home, his gaze turned icy, devoid of any lingering affection. Since she's determined to die, no one can talk her out of it. What you need to do now is dial 120, not my phone number. Benjamin unhesitatingly moved to hang up. On the other end of the phone, Grace, who had heard everything, completely broke down. She snatched the phone, tears streaming down her face, just about to speak, only to find that Benjamin on the other end had already hung up. The assistant glanced fearfully at Grace. Grace, how about I take you to the hospital for a checkup first? At this moment, only the two of them remained in the wedding hall. The scene was a mess. Grace stood there, disheveled. She casually picked up a vase and hurled it forcefully at her assistant's feet. Her eyes burned with hatred and venom. Get out, Benjamin arrived home to find. The first thing that caught his eye was the wedding photo torn into countless fragments on the floor. He stood frozen in place, taking a deep breath only after a long moment before walking over. Beside the shredded pieces lay a brazier containing remnants of ashes. Doreen had burned every piece that belonged to her. Only the hymn in the photo remained, left alone and discarded on the ground. With trembling hands clenched into fists, he shuffled his feet and entered the bedroom. Benjamin quickly opened the wardrobe in the bedroom, only to discover Doreen had taken nothing but her own documents. Everything else was left behind at home. In the wardrobe, the latest season dresses he'd bought to make it up to her, the luxury necklaces and jewelry in the jewelry box. She didn't take a single thing with her. A blinding flash of light streaked across the sky, and he immediately rushed out the door, driving straight to the civil affairs office. Found it, the groom Benjamin, the bride Doreen. But Mr. Benjamin, our records show you and Ms. Doreen have already completed divorce procedures and collected the divorce certificates. Benjamin stood thunderstruck, staring blankly at the staff member. Impossible. The cooling-off period hasn't even ended yet. How could the divorce be finalized? He exclaimed angrily. The staff member gave him an awkward glance. It was processed through the expedited channel. Our records show the documents were collected on the 3rd of this month. You and Ms. Doreen have indeed successfully completed the divorce procedures. Benjamin staggered back 2 steps, his mind reeling as if it had exploded. Divorced, collected. He shook his head uncontrollably, as if he couldn't understand. Impossible. Doreen loved me so much. Impossible, Mr. Benjamin. Are you all right? He violently shook off the arm supporting him, only to trip over his own feet and crash heavily to the ground. Veins bulged on his forehead as he clutched his head in agony, pounding it fiercely with a pained grimace. Mr. Benjamin, Mr. Benjamin, calm down. His heart felt gripped by an enormous hand, the pain so intense he could barely breathe. How could he be so foolish, thinking he could hurt Doreen and she still wouldn't leave him? Where does he get such audacity? Tears streamed from his bloodshot eyes as heart-wrenching pain roared within him. I can't find her. I can't find her. I can't find my wife. Mr. Benjamin, does your wife have any other relatives? Maybe she went back to her parents' home. That's right, Doreen's grandmother. She must be at the hospital keeping her grandmother company. Benjamin staggered to his feet, wiping away tears with the back of his hand. He didn't have time to think, calling his friend while walking. Book 3 tickets to Xinjiang for me, as soon as possible. Yes, right now. Benjamin was drenched in sweat from rushing around, yet he drove tirelessly to the hospital. He bought flowers and fruits on the spur of the moment, just as he was overjoyed at the thought of seeing Doreen in the hospital room, only to find that the bed where Doreen's grandmother had been staying was now occupied by someone else. He stared blankly at the stranger in the hospital bed, stunned. Wondering if he had entered the wrong room, only after double-checking did he walk to the nurse's station with a grim expression. What's going on here? I've been continuously paying for room 035, how could you give it to someone else? The nurse blinked, as if recognizing him. An older nurse nearby frowned and looked up. Which patient are you looking for? Benjamin said with an unpredictable expression, his voice low. The Chen family, old Mrs. Chen, she passed away last week. Benjamin's face cracked like dried earth. Gone, yes, heard she was angered to death. By the time the doctor arrived, she was already fading fast, and to make matters worse, they'd been called away to examine some woman pretending to be unconscious. Everyone could see she was fine, but her husband was so worried and doting. The old lady drew her last breath before they could return. Span, her granddaughter was crying so bitterly in the ward, truly pitiful. It seems they grew up relying on each other, and in the end, she didn't even get to see her one last time. Isn't that heartbreaking? The elderly nurse clicked her tongue and sighed after speaking. The young nurse beside her seemed to have recognized Benjamin. She tugged hard at the elderly nurse's sleeve from below, quietly signaling her to stop talking. Benjamin was completely oblivious to their actions. The scene from that day seemed to flash before his eyes. Doreen looked at him with a shattered expression. No, no, Benjamin, Grandma has fainted. She collapsed to her knees, clutching at his trouser leg. Doreen's eyes were fixed intently on him. Though no tears fell, it pained him more deeply than if she had wept. Ever since Doreen was imprisoned, he had been taking care of her grandmother for her. That day, he had been on his way to visit her grandmother. By the way, tell her that Doreen will be able to visit her soon. He even imagined Doreen hugging him and showering him with grateful kisses. But as soon as the elevator doors opened, Benjamin hadn't even had time to wipe the smile off his face. When he saw the startled Grace, he feared she might relapse again. Grace would then blame all of this on Doreen once more. He was frustrated that she didn't realize how difficult it had been for him to silently support her behind the scenes. To settle all this, to fulfill Grace's 5 wishes as soon as possible, to make her stop suing Doreen, he had been restraining himself all along. Now that everything was about to end, how could he let Doreen make another impulsive mistake? He could only speak to her with a cold expression. If your grandmother still has the strength to harm Grace, how could anything possibly happen to her? He picked up Grace and left immediately, afraid he might give in to the urge to take Doreen away with him. Benjamin turned deathly pale, as if all color had drained from his face in an instant. The dull ache in his heart sharpened into a twisting blade, the pain so intense it stole his breath. He raised a hand and clutched his chest, a sudden coppery taste flooding his throat. Phut! A gush of fresh blood spurted out. Benjamin's body fell heavily backward. In his ears, he heard the shouts of strangers, the clamor of discussion, and the urgent sound of the stretcher cart wheeling him away. But there was one sound he longed to hear, and it wasn't there. Benjamin had been lying in bed for 2 days, completely unaware that the news about him and Grace had already spread like wildfire. What awaited him upon waking were hundreds of missed calls and messages. Mr. Benjamin, you finally answered. What happened between you and MS? Grace at the wedding banquet has been posted online. MS. Grace has been cyberbullied to the point where she doesn't dare leave her house. The law firm has also been besieged by a group of people for the past 2 days, with red paint being thrown and people coming to gawk. Everyone is working from home now. Benjamin rubbed his throbbing forehead. Seeing his assistant hesitate to speak, he said hoarsely, I've troubled everyone lately. I'll personally compensate everyone double for their losses. That's not it, Mr. Benjamin. There's some bad news I need to tell you. The higher-ups have sent someone to inquire about your situation with MS. Grace, you'll both need to undergo investigation. Benjamin pressed his dry lips together. I'll cooperate with the investigation. His eyes were hollow, and his body felt weak. Benjamin had just hung up when his phone rang again. This time it was Benjamin's dad calling. Because of Grace, Benjamin and Benjamin's dad had a very strained relationship back then. Later, he disregarded Benjamin's dad's objections, refused to go on blind dates, and instead married the unremarkable and ill-fated Doreen. In the past, Benjamin would never have answered Benjamin's dad's calls, but now, he couldn't find Doreen anymore, and he could only rely on the Pei family's influence to help him. As expected, Benjamin had barely answered the call when Benjamin's dad started berating him mercilessly. Ungrateful son, the reputation our Pei family has built for generations is going to be ruined by you. Benjamin didn't utter a single word in rebuttal, just listening silently to Benjamin's dad as he scolded him, until he grew tired and heaved a heavy sigh. We'll handle the media for you. The whole thing is just a lunatic causing trouble, and you were merely taken in by a madman's slander. Benjamin, if it weren't for the Pei family name, I wouldn't lift a finger for you. His voice trembled. Dad, Doreen is missing. Please, help me find her. Benjamin's dad stiffened his expression. It was the first time in all these years that Benjamin had called him dad. It was all for a woman. After what felt like an eternity, Benjamin finally heard the voice on the phone again. Doreen's household registration information has been completely erased. Benjamin, you're a lawyer, you know perfectly well under what circumstances a person's household registration would be wiped out. In other words, Doreen is most likely dead. City B was in chaos when Doreen had already settled down in a small border town in the south. It wasn't until her grandmother passed away that Doreen learned that during her 3 years in prison, her grandmother had been secretly saving money for her. Benjamin, perhaps out of guilt, would always bring a thick red envelope filled with money for her grandmother whenever he visited. Her grandmother couldn't bear to spend it. After he left, she would quietly go alone to the county bank and deposit every last cent. Benjamin lied to her, saying that Doreen had gone abroad for further studies and wouldn't return for about 3 years. Grandma feared she might suffer hardships overseas, and worried that Benjamin might change his heart during her 3-year absence. This rekindled her desire to resume her old craft. and she picked up the embroidery needle once more. She saved every penny she couldn't bear to spend on herself. Hoarding it all for Doreen. I had originally planned to hand it to her personally when we met again, but I never expected that their final meeting would be so absurd. Suddenly, someone tapped her on the shoulder. Doreen snapped out of her daze. "What are you sitting here daydreaming about all by yourself?" Gina draped a cloak over Doreen's shoulders. She had only flown here a week ago. The moment she saw Doreen, she was stunned. How could a woman who was already petite lose over 10 pounds in such a short time? Doreen looked as if she were nothing but skin and bones, as though a strong gust of wind could blow her away. Prolonged malnutrition had even turned her hair yellowish and brittle. She languished in that stuffy, airless room. That appearance looked exactly like when she first saw him in prison. Gina's eyes filled with heartache. Tears uncontrollably welled up and spilled from her eyes. She could still cry. But Doreen couldn't anymore. Her eyes were nearly blinded from endless crying day and night when she first entered prison. Doreen had a tough time when she first arrived at the prison. A group of people seemed to have been paid off by someone. They always beat her in secret, leaving her covered in wounds. Doreen had resisted, but the consequence was nearly losing her voice, ruining a fine set of vocal cords. In the end, it was Gina who couldn't stand by any longer. She led the others to drive those people away. Doreen finally got a chance to catch her breath. It was only after that incident that she learned Doreen's reason for being imprisoned. She had seen too many ghosts in her time. But someone as heartless and utterly despicable as Benjamin, this was her first encounter with such a creature. When she saw who had come, Doreen gave her a faint smile. "I miss my grandmother, thinking she's probably become a star in the sky now, twinkling down at me." Gina felt a sudden pang in her heart, yet she didn't want to cry in front of Doreen. Doreen noticed her sorrow but instead burst into laughter. "Gina, I'm fine now, everything will be fine. I don't think my grandmother would want to see me wallowing in despair. I'll strive to live well, to grow stronger. I'll eat properly, sleep well, and make the most of each day." Gina's tears suddenly streamed down her face, filled with anger. She raised her arm and wiped her face with her sleeve. "That's right, Doreen, you've got to prove yourself. Your grandmother is watching over you from heaven. You must live better than anyone else, especially those two scumbags. You must witness their downfall with your own eyes." Doreen smiled and hugged her tightly. The 3 years of wrongful imprisonment were an unspeakable pain she could never forget. Yet meeting Gina became the silver lining in her darkest cloud. Doreen used the money her grandmother left her to build a guest house in this picturesque little town. Gina also stayed behind. At night, they held wine bottles and chatted through the night. Doreen only then realized that there was a reason why Gina hated men. When she was in her teens, she had followed around a so-called big brother. Just because she liked that man, she ruined the rest of her life. She took the blame for him. The man had promised to wait for her release, take her back to their hometown, marry her, and raise a family together. But when Gina got out, she realized the man had long since moved away with the girl he'd rescued from the bar, fleeing to a place she could never find. Gina was heavily intoxicated, tears streaming from her eyes like water from a faucet. She clutched the wine bottle, sobbing uncontrollably, until, exhausted from crying, she slumped onto the bed and fell into a deep sleep. Doreen drank a good deal of wine, but it seemed to make her clearer-headed with each sip. She washed and removed the makeup of the drunken Gina, then tidied everything on the table before returning to her own room. Doreen slowly sat down at the desk and took out the phone from the drawer. She hadn't charged it in a long time, and the phone was black-screened and turned off. When she had charged it and turned it on again, several text messages instantly flooded in. "Wife, I really miss you, where are you?" Benjamin was drunk in the bar. The music blared deafeningly, drawing the gazes of passing girls toward him. He held a wine glass in one hand and a phone in the other, fully aware the person on the other end wouldn't reply, yet he stubbornly typed out message after message and hit send. "Hey handsome, are you alone?" The bar was like a hunting ground, and someone had already set their sights on the most striking-looking Benjamin. But they were too intimidated by Benjamin's aloof demeanor to approach him, until the people at the previous table started playing Truth or Dare. This gave one of them the courage to step forward and strike up a conversation, asking for his phone number, but Benjamin never once looked at the woman beside him. With one hand, he continued typing, sending something into the chat window that never replied. The woman looked down at herself, a little insecurely. The next second, as if summoning immense courage, she reached out and grabbed Benjamin's phone, then flashed a captivating smile at Benjamin. "Handsome, the person across from you isn't paying attention to you. You're so good looking. Why hang yourself on one tree?" Her hand rested on Benjamin's hand. Her heart rate inexplicably quickened. The Benjamin before her, in both looks and height, perfectly matched her desires. She slowly approached, just about to press her red lips against his cheek. Clang, a loud crash. The pain in her head seemed to arrive half a beat late. Blood, she's bleeding, the girls at the nearby table immediately screamed. The woman felt dizzy only afterward, touching her head in confusion. Thick, viscous blood coated her hands. Benjamin's fierce gaze was fixed on her. Who gave you permission to touch my hand? Only his wife is allowed to touch his hand. His wife is quite the jealous type. He can't afford to make her angry, otherwise, Doreen might leave him. Benjamin staggered as he tried to leave, only to be yanked back from behind. You psycho, go die already. A dark figure flashed past with a whoosh. The chair that man lifted came crashing down hard on his head. Benjamin, the whole world before his eyes was trembling. Screams erupted all around as some fled while others backed away. Countless fists and kicks came flying toward him from all directions. Benjamin's vision blurred as blood trickled down his face. He forgot to resist. The sounds reaching his ears seemed filtered through multiple walls, yet not a single word of the insults reached his hearing. Echoing repeatedly in his ears was only that one phrase from Benjamin's dad. In other words, Doreen, she's most likely already dead. How could that be? How could such a strong woman like his wife possibly choose death? He was the one who killed his wife. He killed Doreen. Damn, if I'd known he was that scumbag lawyer from the internet, I would never have hit on him. Exactly, such a disgusting man. Even if he was handed to us, we wouldn't want him. Honestly, I was sobering up earlier and felt quite scared and guilty when I saw all that blood on his face. But then you all recognized him as that scumbag lawyer, and suddenly I felt like an envoy of justice. His wife would probably thank me for beating up that jerk if she saw me, right? Whatever, I'll pay the fine if I have to. At least I got to vent my anger. Same here, that was so satisfying. Just 2 days ago, I was ranting about him online, and who knew I'd run into him in real life like this? Why didn't his ex-girlfriend show up? My hands are itching. If she had come, I'd have beaten her up too. Enough, all of you, come with me to the station. Beating someone up like this, you young people act so impulsively. Have you even considered the consequences? Benjamin ended up in the hospital again. The video of him being brutally beaten was also posted online by someone who witnessed it at the bar last night. He curled up in pain on the ground, never resisting even once from start to finish, letting the fists rain down on him like a storm. At one point, his phone was kicked away by someone. He suddenly resisted and struggled, getting up to search for his phone. While searching, he kept muttering to himself. Only when he found his phone did he seem to have regained some precious treasure. His head and face were covered in wounds, yet he curled his lips into a smile as tears fell. This stark contrast in expression instantly piqued netizens' interest. They began to wonder, Benjamin, what precious thing could possibly be in his phone, worth risking his life to retrieve it? As the buzz grew, people eventually started analyzing those few words he'd been muttering to himself. I figured it out. Benjamin was calling his wife's name. Benjamin's video spread wider and wider. At first, everyone was cursing and condemning him. Then suddenly, many people began to pity him. Online opinions have started to polarize. Benjamin's dad called just as Benjamin finished his medical examination. That self-injury scheme of yours was clever. I've already stoked the flames online for you. Investigators have come, but the evidence chain is insufficient. Grace is mentally ill anyway. This matter will likely blow over. That woman is insane. I advise you not to provoke her anymore. Benjamin didn't respond to Benjamin's dad. He wasn't acting. But there was no need for him to tell Benjamin's dad about it. His face pale, he spoke in a hoarse voice. Any news about her? Benjamin's dad immediately froze. I've already told you, Doreen is dead. When will you finally face reality? The phone was slammed down. Benjamin stared at the pristine white wall, his eyes aching as if something was pressing down on them. Ever since Grace was taken in for questioning, she had been stubbornly waiting for Benjamin to come and provide false testimony for her. She had always excelled academically since childhood. She didn't want to spend the rest of her life in a mental hospital, but when she sent people to find Benjamin, he refused to see any of them, and even hung up on all their calls. Gradually, Grace lost her patience. She started having episodes again. Anxiety drove her to incessantly scratch her own skin. Streaks of red marks were torn open by her nails, oozing blood that smeared across her entire body. She banged her head against the wall, the violent noise drawing the attention of her caretakers. Grace was hospitalized for treatment. When the assistant came to see her, he brought the latest news. The case has been temporarily suspended due to the absence of key individuals and insufficient evidence. Grace snatched the cigarette pack from the assistant's hand. She hastily stuck one into her mouth. I want to be discharged. Arrange my discharge. Benjamin hadn't expected to meet Grace here. As he walked down the corridor, a familiar voice made him stop. Miss Grace, Your condition is very bad right now, you really can't rush to be discharged. The doctor said what you need most now is to take your medicine and rest obediently. Shut up. The reason I'm in this state is all because of that bitch. Doreen, she deserves to die, just like her old, undying grandmother. Why wasn't it her who died that day? How could she be so lucky? She even survived the online bullying. I spent so much money hiring people to smear her, even exposing my own photos at any cost. So why couldn't I just destroy her? Benjamin, too, why won't he care about me? That day, I was so angry in the hospital room that I killed Doreen's grandmother, and he was still on my side, but why won't he come see me or care about me anymore? The things in Benjamin's hand crashed to the floor. What did you say? Grace looked at Benjamin, who had suddenly appeared at the doorway, and the expression on her face quickly changed. How could you be here? She stared in horror at the crimson-eyed Benjamin, yet he completely ignored her question. Benjamin strode forward, the ferocity in his eyes lowering the room's temperature by several degrees. Grace's assistant immediately sensed something was wrong. He stood up and stepped forward, trying to stop him. Mr. Benjamin, MS. Grace is having another episode. What she just said shouldn't be taken seriously. Get out of my way. Benjamin gritted his teeth. He glared fiercely at the woman on the hospital bed. He violently shoved aside Grace's assistant, his large hand seizing the fleeing Grace. He tightly gripped her neck. Grace cried out in pain, yet he seemed completely deaf to it. Repeat what you just said. He panted heavily, gasping for breath. Grace was terrified by his demeanor. Benjamin. What's wrong with you? It's me, Grace. You're hurting me. Let go. Her face turned pale with pain, yet Benjamin continued to choke her relentlessly, staring at Grace before him. The image of Doreen was seared into his mind. His heart ached as if he couldn't breathe. He hadn't misheard. This entire scheme had been Grace's own orchestration. Doreen had clearly told him. She had clearly told him that she hadn't done those things, yet he still chose not to believe her. Instead, he believed this woman who was full of lies. Grace was on the verge of losing her breath. The door was slammed open with a loud bang. The person who rushed in quickly separated the two. Mr. Benjamin, please calm down. Benjamin had veins throbbing violently on his forehead, his face dark and terrifying, as if he couldn't hear a single word anyone said. Grace barely managed to escape from his grasp. She gasped for breath between violent coughs. After a long moment, she stared at Benjamin with utter disbelief. You actually tried to strangle me for that bitch. Benjamin, have you really changed? Have you truly fallen for Doreen? Benjamin, how could you do this to me? Grace screamed hoarsely in accusation, but he turned a deaf ear, his eyes burning with the desire to devour Grace whole. Seeing Benjamin like this, she gradually regained her composure. She fearfully touched her own neck, then turned an anxious gaze toward her assistant. I'm sick. I need to go to a private mental hospital for treatment. Benjamin has gone mad. He genuinely wanted to strangle her. Grace wasted no time checking into the mental hospital. No outsiders are allowed to visit here without my consent. She feared that Benjamin might actually kill her if he learned the truth. Grace looked at Benjamin's photo with a mix of amusement and hatred, tears streaming down her face, and since that day, Benjamin had been forcibly taken back home by Benjamin's dad's men. He frantically smashed everything in the room. Let me out. Benjamin's dad looked at him coldly. Benjamin, I warned you to stay away from that woman. Whether you're clinging to old feelings or seeking revenge, I won't tolerate you tarnishing the Pei family's reputation any longer. Benjamin was locked up. He refused to eat or drink, using hunger strike as his protest. But Benjamin's dad didn't care at all. All he cared about was the Pei family's reputation. Benjamin doubled over from stomach pain, yet in his mind, he conjured up Doreen's image. He never felt a shred of love in this ice-cold home. Once, he thought love meant being with Grace and doing bold, thrilling things together. But it wasn't until Doreen appeared that he truly learned what love was. Benjamin let a mocking smile slip across his pale face. He flicked the lighter with one hand and set the room ablaze, seeing the room on fire. The servant immediately opened the door from outside to let the people out. Benjamin took advantage of the chaos to leave the Pei residence, heading toward Grace's psychiatric hospital. Meanwhile, in a remote border town, Doreen was overwhelmed with the busy homestay business due to the peak tourist season. Ever since she and Gina decided to live here, the two of them reconnected with their former prison mates who they had gotten along well with. Life was tough for them working in the city. So they made a bold decision and simply went to join them. The 5 women managed the homestay business with remarkable efficiency. Gina was eloquent and well-suited for greeting and entertaining guests. Doreen is meticulous and diligent, well-suited for managing accounts and handling aftermath. Helen and Jane are biological sisters who worked at a restaurant before being imprisoned. The restaurant owner, emboldened by alcohol, assaulted Jane, prompting her sister Helen to chop off the rotten flesh between his legs. Doreen and Gina cheered, saying it was well deserved. The two sisters were excellent cooks, and every guest who stayed here couldn't help but praise their culinary skills. As for the cleaning and maintenance of the homestay, Juliet was the eldest sister among them all. When she was very young, she was sold by her parents simply because she was a girl. Juliet married a cripple, but the cripple was a compulsive gambler who sold her again to pay off his debts. Her life was as fragile as duckweed, repeatedly sold off by the only man she could rely on. In the end, she plunged into despair and followed others into the trade, becoming a working girl. Each of them carried their own private sorrows, yet here, they supported and leaned on each other like family. The scar on the heart seems to have been soothed into a scab, and even the most painful place has blossomed with unrestrained flowers. The small town was developed into a tourist attraction. Doreen was too busy every day to dwell on the past, but not thinking about it didn't mean she wasn't paying attention. She knew it was difficult to determine whether Grace had committed intentional homicide back then, not just because Grace was a psychiatric patient, but also because, apart from that video, there were no other eyewitnesses left. Yet she never expected that Grace would have the audacity to distort the truth online and play the victim card. Grace refused to give up. She couldn't bear the thought of living her entire life like a prisoner, confined to this place. She leveraged the power of the internet to craft herself as a victim. With eyes swollen from crying, she stared at her own image in the live stream. None of you have any idea. Doreen's father is a perverted monster. I was blackmailed and tricked into going there. I never intended to hurt anyone at the time. He was the one who lunged at me, threatening me to stay away from Benjamin, not to obstruct his daughter's path to wealth. He was the one who tried to strangle me. I didn't mean to knock over the oil barrel. And he was the one who started the fire. He wanted to burn me to death, but he ended up dying himself. Yet now I have to bear the charge of murder. She wept bitterly. The comments below shifted from initial skepticism to gradually believing her. After all, Doreen's dad is indeed not a good person. MS. Grace, stop crying. We support you. That scumbag deserved to die. It's doing society a favor. Exactly. Protecting yourself counts as self-defense. Grace did nothing wrong. I suspected that video was fake from the start. No doubt about it, it must be Doreen's doing. She's jealous of Grace and wants to ruin her reputation. That woman is just as vile as her bastard father. But, killing is just wrong. What do you know? Beyond the law, there's human compassion. Grace did nothing wrong. The faint, delicate voice was drowned out by those who believed themselves righteous. Gina angrily shouted curses in the room. What a vile woman. Can't even be killed off. Truly, the wicked live 1,000 years. Doreen lowered her eyes, watching Grace whitewash her own reputation in the livestream, her fists silently clenching. 3 years of imprisonment. She loathed Grace, but despised Benjamin even more. But for now, she could only wait a little longer. She turned off her phone screen and casually patted Gina's shoulder. I'm going out for a bit. I'll be back later. Grace reaped the benefits of the internet. Watching her continuously growing fanbase, she was overjoyed, watching those fools, one after another, rushing to her private messages to leave comments, to comfort and encourage her. Reading those messages, she couldn't help but laugh with delight. Little did she know, real danger was slowly creeping toward her. Benjamin closed his phone with a dark, terrifying expression. He watched the entire live broadcast. He hadn't expected Grace to dare to slander Doreen like that. He had truly underestimated her before. Did she think she could escape by hiding in a mental hospital? Benjamin made a phone call and casually said a few words. Soon there was a reply from the other end, with a cold expression. He walked into Grace's psychiatric hospital. The food at the psychiatric hospital wasn't very good. She angrily threw down her bowl and chopsticks. Looking at the food on the floor, she immediately felt a surge of anger. She pulled out her phone and called her assistant. I told you to order from a 5-star hotel. Why are you so inefficient? I get it. You must think I'm down and out now, and you want to kick me while I'm down, don't you? The assistant held the phone away. Her face twisted in annoyance as she furrowed her brows. Miss Grace, how could this be? You only told me last night, but the restaurant you specifically requested requires advance reservations. I've already pulled strings to expedite it for you, but you'll have to bear with it for one more day. It won't be available until tomorrow. I don't want to hear any of this. Let me tell you, anyone else can step on me, but not you. She disdainfully pressed the speakerphone button. Have you forgotten who saved you when you were caught fabricating evidence for a client? It was me. If it weren't for me, with your mediocre skills, do you think you could have gotten into the best law firm in all of City B? Once you're my dog, you'll be my dog for life. If I tell you to go east, you don't dare go west. How dare you say no to me? The other end of the phone was filled with long-suppressed heavy breathing. Grace was about to speak again. A sudden cold laugh came through. Grace. In your eyes, is everyone except Benjamin just dogs who must obey you? What a pity. Benjamin doesn't even want to look at you now. Grace's expression instantly cracked. She glared at her phone screen through gritted teeth. What did you say? I said. Benjamin finds you disgusting and looks down on you. Actually, it's not just Mr. Benjamin, who in the law firm has ever thought highly of you. You only got by riding on Benjamin's coattails before. Your ability, oh wait, do you even have any? What you do have is asking me to find people to teach your love rival a lesson in prison. Tell me, if Benjamin found out his wife didn't have an easy time during those 3 years in jail, found out you secretly had people beat Doreen, force her to swallow food mixed with glass shards, and dislocated her arm, Grace, are you still alive? The phone was abruptly hung up with a click, but Grace had no time to curse the person on the other end of the line, trembling with fear. Her legs weak, she stared at the man who had suddenly appeared before her. Benjamin. Benjamin listened intently to every word Grace said on the phone. His entire body trembled uncontrollably with rage. His face had grown even paler than when he first arrived. Grace instinctively stepped back, reaching for her phone as she prepared to open her live streaming app. Benjamin strode forward and snatched the phone from her hand. He raised his arm and violently smashed the phone onto the ground. Grace gasped in shock, staring at the man before her with terror. Benjamin, I can explain. Those were all his lies. He's blackmailing me. You mustn't believe a word he says. Benjamin's large hand clamped viciously around Grace's chin, the pain making her struggle violently. Then came a sickening crack. Grace's jaw dislocated with the force, and she immediately let out a piercing wail. Her screams attracted the medical staff, yet they merely stood by, watching her with cold indifference. His gaze was sharp as a blade, wishing he could slice Grace piece by piece. Miss Grace's condition has worsened. Take her away for proper treatment. Grace looked at the approaching figure with tears streaming down her face, her eyes filled with terror. She kept retreating, until there was nowhere left to go. Benjamin, you can't do this to me. Have you forgotten who got me raped? It was you. All because of you. You promised to stay with me forever. And you're the one who abandoned me. None of this would have happened if not for you. I hate you, Benjamin. I hate you. She wept until she lost all traces of her usual elegant demeanor. Collapsing to the ground in disarray, struggling futilely against the hands reaching for her, Grace, after being taken away, every treatment method for mental patients was used on her. She convulsed helplessly from the electric shocks, her body tightly bound to the apparatus. Her consciousness grew increasingly hazy, tears streaming uncontrollably from her numb eyes. Outside the door, Benjamin watched the scene with cold indifference. A flash of cruelty flickered in his eyes. His face twisted into a vicious grimace. He could never have imagined. In the corner he couldn't see, Doreen was enduring unspeakable pain. In his view, Grace is enduring nothing compared to the pain Doreen once suffered. Doreen had been restless all morning. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. Juliet, seeing her like this, told her to put aside her tasks and rest in the bedroom. Before she could even stand up, Gina came rushing over in a whirlwind. Doreen, quick. Look at the trending topics online. It turned out that Grace, who usually live-streamed punctually every day, had suddenly gone silent for 3 days. Not only had she stopped broadcasting, but no one in the fan group could reach her either. Some speculated that she had met with some accident. Combined with Grace's recent expose, many suspected that Doreen had taken revenge on her. Coincidentally, someone posted photos of the homestay on an online platform, and unexpectedly captured Doreen's profile in the shot. People online followed the trail, and somehow it was discovered by Grace's fans. This must be that Doreen. She's actually perfectly fine. Can someone dox this female homestay owner's personal info? If she's really Doreen, who's so vicious and terrifying, would you still dare to stay there? Exactly. Grace, who knows how she's doing now? She's lucky to be hiding so far away. Grace, could something have already happened to her? The more you think about it, the scarier it gets. The guest house's reputation quickly took a hit. Even faster than the bad reviews came the exposure of the 5 women's identities. That day, guests staying at their guest house checked out one after another. As they left, probing glances took turns lingering on them. All right, stop looking. Be careful or they might chop off that lump of flesh between your legs too. Let's go, hurry up. I can't even bear to think about it. The cleaning staff used to be prostitutes. Who knows if they have syphilis or not? Doreen's face turned alternately green and purple with rage. Gina clenched her fists in anger and made as if to step forward, but was abruptly pulled back by Juliet. She looked at her intently, then shook her head firmly. She then turned her gaze to Helen and Jane. Though their eyes were red-rimmed, their faces remained stubbornly defiant. Gina had a fiery temper and slammed her fist on the table. After all the tenants had checked out, Doreen walked up to everyone with a grim expression. Her back seemed weighed down by something heavy, nearly buckling under the pressure, yet she still straightened her frail shoulders and bowed deeply to everyone. "I'm sorry, it's my fault you're all involved in this." Juliet was the first to react, quickly helping Doreen to her feet. "What nonsense are you talking about? Have you forgotten what we all said when the shop opened? We share both honor and disgrace, advancing and retreating together. This isn't your fault, it's the world's fault. It's men's fault." "Exactly, Doreen. Don't pay attention to those words online. We've heard much worse than that, and we're still standing strong. Don't blame yourself either. Without you, neither of us sisters would be where we are today. If the guesthouse can't operate, we'll just do something else. With all the money we've saved, we could even get plastic surgery and no one would recognize us." Gina burst out laughing. "Then who do you plan to look like?" "Don't laugh, I'm serious. I've even found reference pictures. I want to look like a celestial beauty." "Jane, who's your favorite? Let Big Sis give you some advice." The atmosphere instantly became lively. The five of them sat around the circular table, eating hot pot and chatting freely, completely at ease. The sisters were the first to get drunk, followed by Gina. Juliet took care of them. Doreen took her phone and went outside the courtyard. She dialed the number across the line once more. Originally, she hadn't held much hope, but when the call connected, a deep voice spoke up first from the other end. "I'll testify for you." Doreen was taken aback, then felt her eyes sting with gratitude, but before she could speak, the caller quickly hung up. Doreen had no time to dwell on it and immediately contacted her lawyer again. Justice delayed. She would personally cleanse the injustice branded upon her. The case retrial required following proper procedures. Online, various speculations proliferated due to Grace's sudden disappearance, until one day, the long-vanished Grace suddenly reappeared in the public eye. Her eyes were dull and vacant, occasionally drifting toward the other side of the video. "I'm sorry for worrying everyone. Please stop making baseless speculations. My condition has just worsened, and I've been undergoing treatment recently. I apologize for what I said before. All along, I've only been jealous of MS, Doreen. She was never the one standing between me and Benjamin, yet she's been bearing unnecessary trouble caused by our relationship. I don't know if she'll see this video or if she'll accept my apology. But here, I want to sincerely say to her, I'm sorry." In the video, Grace seemed somewhat fearful, glancing to the side from time to time. Behind the recording of the video was Benjamin's dark and terrifying face. Her trembling voice turned towards Benjamin. I've already said everything as you ordered. I beg you, don't give me any more treatment today. I was wrong. I was truly wrong." She knelt shivering at Benjamin's feet. Once tender eyes now held nothing but fear. Yet Benjamin's gaze upon her was filled only with disgust and revulsion. "Grace, I never agreed to this. You're the one who demanded compensation." Grace stared at him as if struck by lightning, her entire being radiating despair, yet in Benjamin's eyes, there wasn't even a trace of sympathy. "This is just the beginning. I'll make you repay everything you owe her." Benjamin turned and left after speaking. He had already seen that half-profile photo posted online. He could be certain that was the very person who kept him awake at night. If not for recording this video, he would have already flown to Doreen's side by now. He wiped his hand in disgust where Grace had touched him. Turning around, I headed towards the airport. Grace's video has once again sparked widespread speculation. Many suspect she was coerced into suddenly changing her statement. Doreen's homestay was originally closed for business, yet some people came specifically to stay for this reason. They pointed their cameras at several women in the guesthouse, describing the guesthouse as a women's prison outside high walls. They made special trips to visit and take photos. Gina was so angry she wanted to chase them out with a broom, but Doreen reached out to stop her. "We're running a business here, we can't keep turning people away." After some discussion, they decided to face the challenge head-on. No matter how tough things got, it couldn't be worse than their past hardships. Until a blogger who came to check in unfortunately rolled down the scenic hillside. It was the sisters passing by who rescued him, then helped him down the mountain with great difficulty and took him to the hospital. Another blogger suddenly had an asthma attack, and it was Doreen and Gina who appeared in time to find asthma medication for her. Someone lost their child, and the mother panicked on the street, crying bitterly. It was Juliet who walked several streets with her before finally bringing the child back. When she knelt before Juliet in tears, she hung her head in shame. She was the guest who checked out that day, the same woman who feared this homestay might have syphilis. Doreen. They continued to live their lives undaunted by the rumors and slander. Then one day, their homestay unexpectedly topped the trending searches again. But this time, the screen wasn't flooded with curses. The bold headline carried words that were brief yet struck straight to the heart. Have you ever truly tried to understand someone, not just by listening, but from the heart? A 5-minute video, it's how others see them. There are elderly people who've lived with them for years, unable to go online to defend them. There are impoverished children they quietly supported, whose eyes sparkle with starlight when mentioning them. There are also influencers they helped, filled with remorse and apologies. At the end of the video, the creator summarizes with one sentence: "Don't let your keyboard become a weapon to hurt others." Homestays are booming once again. This time, travelers from all over the country are scrambling to book them. They've been welcoming guests from morning till night. Doreen looked at the smiles on their faces and couldn't help but smile too. Early the next morning, before she could wake up on her own, the door to her room was violently slammed open. Gina looked shocked as she yanked Doreen up from the bed. "That ex-husband of yours, that bastard and son of a bitch, he's come looking for you." Doreen had known this day would come eventually. Goodbye, Benjamin. He had grown much thinner. The moment he saw Doreen, he couldn't help but want to hold her tightly. Yet the next second, she quietly dodged his embrace. Benjamin's eyes suddenly shrank with pain, his eyes filled with desolation as he stared at his outstretched hand. A lump forming in his throat. "Doreen, are you alright? I've been searching for you for so long, but all your personal information was deleted. I couldn't find you anywhere. I thought you." People came and went around them, with early rising tenants greeting Doreen as they passed by. When looking at Benjamin, there was always a vague sense of familiarity. Doreen didn't want to be a trending topic anymore, so she grabbed her grocery basket and headed out the door. Benjamin followed closely behind her without a word. "Doreen, I'm so relieved to see you're okay. Did you see all those messages online a while ago? I'm so sorry. Wife, I really am. Have you suffered a lot of grievances while I wasn't by your side? I know you don't want to see me right now, but wife, I beg you, please give me a chance to explain. Wife, believe me, I truly love you, and everything I did was for you. I was deceived by Grace, but don't worry, I've made her suffer enough. Now she's in a mental hospital, screaming to the heavens and crying to the earth, but no one hears her." He followed closely behind Doreen, not daring to get too close, yet afraid that if he fell too far behind, he wouldn't be able to keep up with Doreen's pace, until Doreen suddenly stopped. He walked forward joyfully, just about to speak, when Doreen suddenly interrupted him. "Benjamin, you don't actually think you're some hero saving a damsel in distress, do you? Have you forgotten who caused me to be repeatedly exposed and verbally abused online, and who caused me to suffer so much in prison?" The mockery in her eyes seemed to sting his vision. "Benjamin, don't forget, it was you who personally sent me to prison." Gazing at the man she had once loved with all her strength, now, she felt nothing but utter disgust. His body stiffened for a moment, his lips trembling as his face paled. "Wife, I know I've hurt you a lot, but I swear to God, you're the only one I love." I was focused on making up for my past mistakes, trying to fulfill Grace's 5 wishes. I just wanted to cut ties with her as soon as possible and live our own lives, but I never thought it would indirectly hurt you. I was truly deceived by Grace. I never imagined she would publicize her own rape photos just to frame you. She blackmailed me with them, saying if I didn't expose your photos, she would report you and send you back to jail. I truly couldn't bear to send you back in there again. He could never endure that kind of pain a second time. He looked pained, not like he was acting, but Doreen's eyes never showed any sympathy for him. "So, Benjamin, you'd rather believe I'm a woman who stops at nothing to achieve her goals than acknowledge the harm Grace has been inflicting on me all along. You say you love me, but your love is flimsy and laughable." Benjamin's heart bled as if pierced. He swayed slightly, shaking his head in tremors. "No, it's not like that, darling. I believe you. How could I not believe you? Give me one more chance. I beg you, let me take proper care of you. I swear before your grandmother's grave. I promised her I would." Slap. Benjamin's face was struck sideways, the searing pain making it impossible to tell whether his heart or his cheek hurt more. Doreen's forehead veins bulged as she glared furiously at the man before her. "Benjamin, you have no right to mention my grandmother. I never want to see you again. Get out." Doreen ran back to the guest house, slamming the door shut and barring Benjamin from entering. Benjamin refused to leave without seeing Doreen, his heart unwilling to give up. Gina waved a large broom in front of him, the dust immediately making him cough several times. Juliet scowled and splashed a basin of water at his feet. Dirty water stains splashed onto his trouser legs, yet he still held back from losing his temper. He knew these people were all Doreen's friends. He only begged them to put in a good word for him. "I beg you, I truly love Doreen. I have my reasons." Gina burst into laughter upon hearing this. Is this what you call love? Making your wife drink until she vomits blood, or falsely accusing her of faking illness to frame your ex-girlfriend? Or exposing your wife's childhood scars for the whole world to see, or, to protect your ex-girlfriend, causing the death of your wife's beloved grandmother? Benjamin, you bastard, why don't you just die? Do you know how badly Doreen was beaten in prison back then? Where were you when she was forced to swallow food mixed with glass? Where were you when her ribs were broken and she lay in pain all night, unable to sleep? Where were you? Answer me, where were you? Gina cleared her throat and spat towards Benjamin. What's the matter? Can't answer. Let me tell you where you were. You were on a cruise with your ex-girlfriend admiring the sea views, bidding for her favorite diamond jewelry at Sotheby's, traveling the world with her. Juliet turned and walked away. While a few curious tenants peeked their heads out from the rooftop, Gina sneered at him with utter indifference. Watching Benjamin's trembling body, she felt so disgusted it nearly made her retch. Benjamin, your love is just this pathetic. Benjamin stubbornly refused to leave. He is not welcome here. He stayed at a nearby guest house, waiting every day for Doreen to appear. As if Doreen was deliberately avoiding him, she kept hiding in the guest house and refused to come out, until one day, Benjamin's phone suddenly rang. It was a call from City B, from Benjamin's dad. He clenched his jaw and answered the call. Benjamin, get your ass back to City B and clean up your mess. The words had barely left his mouth when the call was abruptly ended. Before Benjamin could even process what was happening, his phone rang again, this time with the City B Police Department requesting his cooperation in an investigation. Only then did Benjamin finally understand everything. Doreen hadn't been avoiding him, she'd already left for City B long before he'd even noticed her absence. New evidence has emerged in the case where she was falsely accused of murder. This time, she submitted both witness testimony and physical evidence. Soon, the relevant authorities uncovered the full truth about the case from years ago. Doreen had always lived across from a very strange person. He disliked socializing and going out, always hiding inside that house. The curtains were tightly drawn, as if shutting out the world. Only after being imprisoned did Doreen belatedly realize, that day, the curtains of that house weren't drawn. They lived in an old residential area where the houses were quite close together. There was no way he hadn't heard or seen anything. After being released from prison, Doreen had been trying to contact him, but when she finally managed to find Tony, he refused to testify in court due to his fear of crowded places. For all this time, she had been working on convincing Tony. It was only recently that he finally nodded in agreement and gave her a piece of decisive evidence. When the police came to the mental hospital looking for Grace, she knelt down in tears, begging them to take her away from this prison. Benjamin was taken away directly as soon as he got off the plane. He lowered his eyes and glanced around, only to find that Doreen was nowhere to be seen. With a self-deprecating smile curling his lips, he got into their car. Soon, the case was reopened for retrial. All the evidence was laid bare before the public. Grace's false accusations, and Benjamin's deliberate wrongdoing as a lawyer who broke the law he was sworn to uphold. The online sentiment had shifted once again, but Doreen didn't focus on these comments. Benjamin had not refuted a single word from beginning to end. Benjamin's dad, none of the words his father had said to him had registered in his mind. In his mind, there was only that one sentence Doreen had thrown at him during her recent confrontation. Benjamin, you said you loved me, yet until the day I left, you never once thought to clear my name in that old case. You chose to double your revenge on Grace instead, never mentioning the vile things you'd done. You said you owed Grace, you said it was for the Pay family, you said you had no choice. But to me, you were only ever thinking of yourself. Benjamin, you're not just a rotten person, you're thoroughly filthy. After Doreen left, Benjamin broke down into desperate laughter and tears. He realized that what saddened him wasn't merely Doreen's unforgiving stance, but how her words had without exception pierced through the veil of selfishness he'd concealed in his heart. Benjamin's dad was furious because Benjamin hadn't spoken as instructed. Overcome with rage, he suffered a heart attack and collapsed on the spot. After regaining consciousness, he used his personal account to announce the severance of paternal ties with Benjamin, denounced Benjamin as an unfilial son. Detesting his unlawful deeds, Benjamin had lost everything completely. He sat quietly in the confined space, his mind entirely consumed by thoughts of that day 3 years ago. Doreen sat here with what kind of emotion? What was she thinking at that time? Despair? Pain? Was it the same as him? Her heart being constantly churned by a knife, so painful it was hard to breathe. It turns out, even someone as selfish as him could feel regret. She had said it before, she wanted to go to Xinjiang. To go with him and her grandmother, but in the end, he had lost that bright and carefree Doreen. Doreen returned to the small town. Gina threw her a birthday party. The theme was to celebrate new life. That evening, many people came to her birthday party. There were their tenants, neighbor friends from around the town, and people they had helped in the past. They played and frolicked late into the night. Doreen, before finally lying down on the soft, plush bed, Grace had completely lost her mind under Benjamin's relentless psychological torment. She couldn't answer any questions, yet the only thing she remembered was that she mustn't go to the mental hospital. Yet in the end, she was still sent back to the psychiatric ward. She struggled frantically, her eyes brimming with tears. She kept screaming Benjamin's name, but no longer out of love, she shrieked hoarsely. As if expending every ounce of her strength, she hurled the vilest, filthiest words she could muster at him. Then he fell heavily. She suffered a shock, developing a lower body stress disorder that left her unable to care for herself in daily life. Not long after, Grace died on a filthy hospital bed. 3 years later, the man who liked Juliet pursued her relentlessly for 2.5 years, finally winning her over with his sincerity. Jane returned to school. Her old wounds healed by familial love and warmth, becoming confident and radiant once more. Gina became obsessed with cooking and started competing with Helen for kitchen time, but only she and her sisters dared to eat what she cooked. Doreen planted many fruits and vegetables again in the courtyard of the homestay. Passing travelers can enjoy it for free. Their homestay became a must-visit spot for local check-ins. That winter, the town welcomed its first snowfall of the season. Several people ran joyfully through the snow, their laughter ringing in the air. Outside the courtyard, a desolate figure appeared, lonely and forlorn. Only upon hearing that familiar laughter did he seem to feel the warmth within his own body. A thick hat covered his head, attempting to conceal the thinning hair from chemotherapy. He swallowed hard, forcing back the stinging tears in his eyes. He turned away without disturbing the people inside. Doreen, may you be happy, forever happy. The end.